It wasn't the work that broke me. It was a simple error notification on a screen at 2 in the morning. That day, I realized that my online business, my greatest pride, had become a gilded cage, and that I had forged its bars myself. This isn't a video offering tips you've heard 1,000 times before. This is the story of my downfall and, more importantly, how I learned to get back on my feet. I'm going to tell you how passion can turn into a poison, how ambition can isolate you, and I'll share the 7 steps of my recovery so you never have to experience what I went through. Chapter 1: The Merger. In the beginning, everything was perfect. I'd left a boring job to launch an online course platform for digital artists. My passion was creation. And suddenly, my passion became my profession. Sleepless nights weren't sacrifices, they were investments in my dream. Every new subscriber, every positive comment, it was an adrenaline rush. My name and my brand name became synonymous. I was no longer Mark, the guy who likes to draw, I was Mark from Credigital. My personal identity began to fade, absorbed by my professional identity. When someone criticized one of my courses, they weren't criticizing my product, they were criticizing me. My worth as a human being became directly proportional to the numbers on my dashboard. This is the first trap, the most subtle. You don't see it coming. You think it's passion, dedication. In reality, you're laying the first brick of your own emotional prison. You tie yourself to the ship, not realizing you'll sink with it if a storm hits. And believe me, in online business, the storm always comes eventually. Chapter 2: Hyper-optimization. The initial passion slowly gave way to an obsession with performance. The joy of creating a new course was replaced by the anxiety of its launch. Every video, every email, every post was analyzed, dissected. Open rates, click-through rates, conversion rates, watch time. I had become a data analyst of my own life. I tested different hooks, different button colors, and even different intonations in my voice to see what converted best. Spontaneity had vanished. I felt like I was playing a role, that of the successful entrepreneur, and I was afraid my audience would discover the tired, anxious imposter behind the mask. The famous "work smarter, not harder" motto turned into a nightmare. Because working smarter meant your brain never stopped. In the shower, at dinner, trying to fall asleep. I wasn't just optimizing my business, I was optimizing every second of my existence so that it would, directly or indirectly, serve growth. But that was only the beginning of the descent. Chapter 3: Invisible Isolation. The paradox of online business is that you can have a community of tens of thousands of people and still feel profoundly alone. I interacted with hundreds of people every day via comments, messages, emails. But these interactions were superficial, transactional. They were tied to my role, not my person. Meanwhile, I drifted away from my real friends, my family. When I talked to them about my problems, they didn't understand. What are you complaining about? You're your own boss, you work from home, you can take vacations whenever you want. They didn't see the prison. They didn't see that being your own boss also means being your own tormentor. That business is a machine that never sleeps, and that if I stopped, I felt like everything would collapse. I missed birthdays, dinners, simple moments, always with the same excuse: I have to finish something important. The truth is, I had become addicted to the validation my work gave me, and the real world just couldn't compete. I lived online, and my offline life was slowly dying. Chapter 4: The Body's Warning Signs. My body started sending me messages. Subtle at first, then increasingly urgent. Persistent headaches that medication no longer relieved. Insomnia where I'd spend hours staring at the ceiling, my brain racing, replaying my next day's to-do list on a loop. Chronic fatigue, so profound that even after a night's sleep, when I managed to sleep, I'd wake up exhausted. My creativity, the fuel for my business, started sputtering. Ideas stopped flowing. Every new video was torture to produce. I felt empty, like a hollow shell. I was an imposter teaching creativity when I didn't have an ounce left in me. I did what many do, I ignored the warning signs. I told myself it was normal. It's the price of success, I'd repeat to myself. I upped my coffee intake, I cut my sleep even more. I treated my body like a machine, forgetting that even the most robust machine eventually breaks down if it's not maintained. And the breaking point was much closer than I imagined. Chapter 5: The Grain of Sand That Toppled Everything. The turning point in my story isn't dramatic. I didn't go bankrupt, a competitor didn't crush me. No. The cause of my collapse was a bug. A simple software bug. One night, around 2 in the morning, while doing my umpteenth check just to make sure everything was fine, I saw an alert on my dashboard. The main payment processor, the one handling 90% of my transactions, was down. Unexpected maintenance. No new sales could go through. Estimated downtime, 48 hours. Rationally, it wasn't a big deal. A direct loss, yes, but the business wasn't going to die because of it. But at that moment, my rational brain no longer existed. What I saw on that screen wasn't a technical problem. It was the complete shutdown of my validation system. The stream of notifications, sales, rising numbers, the only thing that fed my ego and justified my existence, had suddenly stopped dead. My heart started racing, I broke out in a cold sweat, I couldn't breathe. I had a panic attack. Not because of the money. But because, for the first time, I realized I had absolutely no control. I had built a monster that completely controlled me, and this bug had just severed the only link that made me feel powerful. I was a puppeteer whose strings had just been cut. And I realized that without those strings, I was nothing. It was the most terrifying and, ironically, the most important moment of my life. Chapter 6: Forced Disconnection. Those 48 hours were purgatory. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't fix the problem. I couldn't optimize the solution. I was helpless. The first day, I paced around my apartment like a caged lion, refreshing the page every 5 minutes. It was pure torture. The second day, exhausted, I broke down. I left my phone and computer on my desk and went outside. Without a purpose. For the first time in years, I walked around looking at my surroundings, not the screen in my hand. I rediscovered my neighborhood. I felt the sun on my face. I heard the sounds of the city. The silence in my head was deafening and unsettling at first. Then, slowly, it became calming. I realized the world kept turning, even if my business was on hold. That my worth wasn't tied to my revenue. This forced disconnection was a jolt. It allowed me to see the prison for what it was. And here's the most important thing. I understood that the key wasn't on the door, but within me. Chapter 7: Recovery and Non-Negotiable Boundaries. When the payment system came back online, something in me had changed. I couldn't go back to my old life. I decided to rebuild my business, but also my relationship with it, on healthy foundations. First, I worked on dissociating my identity from my brands. Cray Digital could exist without Mark being connected 24/7. I started hiring, delegating, not to scale, but to survive. Second, I defined sacred, non-negotiable boundaries. No more work after 7 p.m. Weekends are for real life. The phone no longer enters the bedroom. At first, it was incredibly difficult. I felt like I was abandoning my baby. Third, I automated my validation. I put systems in place that ran without me, so I no longer needed to constantly check if things were running smoothly. I disabled 90% of my notifications. It's amazing how restful digital silence can be. Fourth, and perhaps most counterintuitive, I started scheduling nothing in my calendar. Time slots where my only goal was to do nothing productive. Read a novel, walk, sit on a bench. I relearned how to be bored. And it was in that boredom that my creativity returned, stronger than before. In conclusion, the burnout lurking around the corner wasn't just due to overwork. It was an identity crisis. I had allowed my online business to devour the person I was. The solution to avoid it isn't to work less, but to fiercely protect who you are outside of your project. Build your business, but build strong walls around your personal life, your mental health, your identity. Your greatest asset isn't your marketing strategy or your sales funnel, it's you. If you collapse, everything else will follow. This story is a warning, but it's also a message of hope. You can get lost in the entrepreneurial journey, but you can also find yourself again, provided you understand that true success isn't a dashboard full of green, but a balanced life where business is a tool for your fulfillment, not the other way around. Save this video so you don't forget these lessons. Don't forget to subscribe.